is just understanding that the normal search LLMs are great. They're fit for purpose in that they're very, very good at searching the information and just gathering lots of information, summarizing lots of text, but they don't hold a candle to what the medically designed platforms can do, and particularly CLIA, which has the most extensive database of anything in the world.
Welcome to the Everyday Epigenetics, raw, real, relatable podcast. We're your hosts, Susan Robbins, certified epigenetic human performance coach,
and Kate King, licensed psychotherapist, board-certified art therapist, and award-winning author. Together, we bring two perspectives, two styles, and one shared passion for epigenetics.
On this podcast, we delve into topics such as environment, nutrition, fitness, mindset, social dynamics, and trauma as they pertain to epigenetic expression in a way that's relatable to everyone.
We recognize that everyone's needs are unique. There are no one-size-fits-all solutions for your mind, body, and heart. The true magic lies within you.
So if you're ready to create a radiant life through epigenetics and reclaim your authentic self, then buckle up. Here we go. Welcome to the Everyday Epigenetics, raw, real, relatable podcast. I am your host, Susan Robbins, and I am so excited to have, for time number 4, I believe this is, the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend of PH360, Dr. Cam McDonald. If you have been a listener to this podcast for quite a while, you know who Cam is. He hasn't been on the podcast it's been over a year, so well overdue. Right. But every podcast with Cam, people are like, that was fantastic. He is the CEO and Chief Educator of PH360. He was my mentor. He's my friend. He was my coach and got me involved in PH360. And of course, as you all know, I have never looked back. We are going to talk today. This is going to be a really fantastic conversation. So gather your friends, gather your family, listen to this, because every stinking one of you has been on ChatGPT. Don't tell me you haven't been. And you look to find information out. Maybe it's symptoms. Maybe you found out you have genetic SNPs, anything going on. I am seeing people say they are diagnosing and trying to treat themselves through ChatGPT. People, not the way to go. So we're going to talk about ChatGPT, what it's used for, what its limitations are. Cam is the bomb on this. We had this conversation, and I was just like, we have to talk about this in the podcast. And we are going to introduce you today to a cutting-edge medical AI that we are using with PH360. And it's called CLIA, C-L-I-A. And so there is a difference. AI can be used really well in the right situations and the right type of AI. And so Cam is going to help us differentiate, and I'll talk a little bit about what I've seen, because I have used CLIA on myself with some incredible results, and I have used it on several clients, and it is a game changer in my coaching space because I don't know it all. And it's just a great way to get new ideas of what could be happening, and we'll explain the details. But Dr. Cam, welcome back.
Thank you so much. It is wonderful to be here, Susan, as always. And no, I'm excited. You're doing incredible work. Podcast's going nuts, which is great to hear. And this is a very important topic today on AI and healthcare, because it is the future, and we need to get it right.
Absolutely. And I think we are getting it right. And let's start with the differences. To start with ChatGPT, because I see this all the time. And before I had use of CLIA, I dabbled. I would go in and I tested it with DNA, and I would pull up some different DNA things. I'm like, that's not right. Right? So if you're not trained in understanding where limitations are, you could be doing some things that could be potentially useless or even detrimental, I think. So
Yep.
You had great ideas that you were telling me when we had a chat about this and wanting to do this podcast. So I'm going to turn the floor over to you, because this Sit down, buckle up, people. Let's go.
Okay, cool. We'll try and keep it as practical as possible. So when we're talking about like why are we going to AI for health, that's probably an important question to start with. And the reason is that it's a huge amounts of information that is really accessible and now presents it in a way that's very readable, because all of that same information is available on Google. In fact, probably more information is available on Google than ChatGPT, but I think they're getting closer and closer. But what ChatGPT is an LLM. It's a large language model. And what that does is it gives all of the information from the internet a personality. So instead of just interacting with a Google site and searching for the right site that isn't saying, hey, look at me, and says it in a way that really just combines information together really well, ChatGPT does all of that. And the large language models do that. It essentially gives information a personality. That's the way to think about it. And it's very, very good at scanning lots and lots and lots of text. And then it essentially creates a prediction on what's the most likely letter to appear. What's the most likely word to appear? What's the most likely answer to this question based on scanning all of the text. Now, so there's two really important things that we need to understand. One is the personality, and that's the language model and how it processes and the rules that are set up inside it. Just think of like a 5-year-old. A 5-year-old has very different rules in their head to what's appropriate in a mud puddle compared to a 30-year-old female in a wedding gown on the way. They've got very different rules about how am I going to treat this mud. And that's what separates the LLMs, is the rules that they place around it. Like they've got the same amount of mud, but they've got different rules. But then you can also have different mud or different data. The one mud pile is like this very detoxifying clay that's got all of these nutrients in it. So when you play around it, it actually makes you healthier. I've never used this analogy before, but I'm going with it. And,
here we go.
And whereas another bit of mud can be just junk and full of like petrochemical fumes and chemicals and all of that sort of stuff. So you've got these two things. You've got the mud that you're working with, and then you've also got the rules that you're applying to that mud. Like we're just playing in the mud right now. So ChatGPT has, when it comes to medical health, it doesn't have many rules that help it use the information really, really well. It has some avoid medical harm issues. It's if you say, hey, I think I have my heart's beating out of my chest or whatever it might be, it's not going to give you, it's going to say, hey, you need to go see a doctor right now. It's going to say something like that. There are rules built into it so that basic medical things, it's do no harm. At least there's probably ways that we could stretch that out as well, but very, very basic rules. The second thing is the rules that it has around treating different elements of the questions that it's asking. Let's say that it's saying it's wanting to ask about a gene. It'll just pull all of the information that people have written on the internet about that gene specifically. And it might throw some references in there or whatever. It might resource some scientific articles, but there's no guarantee on that. So we actually don't know about the quality of the mud that the ChatGPT is using. Like it could be nutrient rich, it might be not that great, but so this is where it gets interesting. And the other thing that ChatGPT doesn't know as well so much is it doesn't know how to relate concepts in the body. The body's a very complex physiological process. Your gut microbiome will change your neurotransmitters. Your neurotransmitters will influence your sympathetic and parasympathetic outflow, which then influences your muscle tension and the tension in your fascia, which then influences the amount of calcium in your bones, which relates to calcium deposits around your tissues, which it doesn't understand all of these interrelated activities that are occurring between digestion and exercise and nervous systems, because it hasn't been trained on those rules specifically to an appropriate level. So when you're asking, it'll give you information on the thing that you ask about because it can access lots of information and predict what text should be next, but it's not good at interpreting, at clinically analyzing. It'll just provide the information that it has available. When you're learning a new topic for the first time and you're telling somebody about it and you over-explain everything. just because I have to convince myself that I know this, and I have to convince you that I know lots about it. So I'm just going to share everything about you. And then a very wise person who knows that information comes and just says, oh, just do this one line. It's like, oh my God, that all makes complete sense. It's
Right.
Now, this is what ChatGPT in medicine is like that. It'll give you a dump of information, all of the information that you want, but it's not necessarily related. It's not necessarily wise. And that's because it isn't trained with clinical wisdom and with an understanding of the physiology. So the rules that it's working with are not complete to be a doctor. It's definitely not trained that way. Yet we assume that it is. And so we ask a question of it and we get this information, but it's just saying, oh, I know lots of stuff about that. And it just will spit lots of information at it, but it's not necessarily all aligned. Secondly, it's not accounting for you as a person. It's just saying, generally, this is the information out here. And your situation can be very, very different. And we can get into that as well. So when we go back to that analogy, the mud is a little bit unknown. What's the nutrient quality of this mud, like the data that it's using? What's the information that it's sourcing from? It's lots of mixed stuff. So the quality of what we're playing in can be a little bit low or a bit of a surprise. Secondly, the rules that are in place. How do I play in this mud? Do I want to play in this mud? That is where it's not trained to be a clinician. It is trained to protect people from harming themselves, hopefully, but it doesn't understand the interrelationships and how all of this comes together, and it doesn't understand you specifically. So there are some huge gaps in ChatGPT and why it shouldn't be used medically. There's lots of other reasons too, but that's a starting point, so we don't get too technical.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. It can't look at the body as a system. It's looking at just the one thing you're asking it at that time.
Yes,
And
that's right.
when I played with it, I had to keep asking. And here's another question. Here's another thing to factor in. So you're doing all the work, but it's still not connecting the things together,
That's right.
that's what
Yep.
I experienced. And so I'll see people post, say, on MTHFR, and I've got variance in 677T means I should do methylfolate. But what's your COMT? Do you put them both in there? But then there's other things that play a part too. And then what are you experiencing? What's your phenotype? How is everything expressing? Because you may not need all that.
Mhm.
You may not need certain supplements that it's going to tell you to put out there.
Exactly.
Because like people think things are a diagnosis. They're not. This is just a propensity that could happen. But ChatGPT is thinking, okay, if you have this, then you need all this. And again, you're missing the individual in all of that.
Yeah.
So introduce us to CLIA,
Mhm.
which is the flip side of ChatGPT.
It is just a much more enhanced model specifically for medicine, and this is the really important thing. So firstly, CLIA has been developed over the last 15 years of AI insights. We've been using AI in CLIA since 2011, so about 14 years. So that's a much longer than ChatGPT has been around. And what's really important about that is the data, the quality of the mud. Like, what are we playing in here? The information that is being sourced through CLIA has three distinct differences. And the first one is that it's based on hyper-granular personalized data. So ChatGPT, you'll say, hey, is fiber or is saturated fat good for my cholesterol levels? So what ChatGPT will do, it'll search the literature about those two terms and it'll say, oh, great, some studies say this, some studies say that, whatever it might be. Because all it's going off is like the result of a study that says, oh, yep, it says it's good. Yep, it says it's bad, whatever it might be. And, oh, maybe in this group of people it was good, in this group of people it was bad, but still it's very general. It's just like on average, we think it's this way or that way for this demographic. Now, that's the best data that ChatGPT has, is big average data from randomized controlled trials, maybe just trials, observational studies, whatever it might be, if it's doing that well. What CLIA has is millions of human years of follow-up of hyper-individualized phenotype data. Like, how do we understand every single individual in this data set? Not just an average response of, oh, we think 40-year-olds will experience a raise in cholesterol if they have saturated fats. We have, not only are they 40, but they've got a particular body size and shape. We know that their nervous system works in a particular way. We know their digestive system works in a particular way. We know about their circadian rhythms. We know about their hair color, eye color, skin tone, their ancestry, where they're living right now, the amount of exercise that they're doing, specific. And now with the wearable data, even more and more of that information too. From a baseline, if you're going searching for an answer to something, AI is far better when it has volume of data. So there are 3 V's: volume, veracity, and variety. This is what makes data really, really powerful. And the volume is much, much greater when it comes to individualized data. When we're talking about CLIA, we have millions of human years of follow-up from people 140 countries around the world. Virtually every ethnic base is represented adequately so that we can separate that out straight away, which is wonderful. Whereas there's big biases in the published literature as to which population is studied, males versus females, all of those types of things as well. So a lot of that is balanced out in the data set that we have, which is really, really lovely. So not only do we have more data about each individual, so that obviously adds to volume, but that also gives us the variety because we're in so many different countries as well. Now, ChatGPT will be sourcing from a varied sources as well. That's why it's so powerful, but won't be able to then look at all of that varied data and make it apply to the individual because it doesn't understand the individual, because we have a really, really, really thorough understanding of the individual and the differences within the platform. And that's been a huge difference. I want to go searching for an answer to a question of saturated fats. Great. Let's look at people just like me and let's see how they go with saturated fats. Oh, that's a much more valid answer. Same age, similar body structure, similar digestive capacity, similar circadian rhythm, similar ancestry, similar this, similar that. That granularity that we have allows for a far better response from AI than just, oh, we looked at all of these mixed studies of average populations. We think it's this based on the weight of things. So that's very important, is that we've got this very unique data set that nobody else in the world has of so many people in such a high level of detail. From a variety, we have the many, many different countries around the world. And then from the veracity, we've gone to great lengths to make sure that a huge population of the population that we have is validated. So they've been checked and processed to ensure that the data that's in there is accurate. Whereas you don't have that guarantee with ChatGPT of the accuracy of the data. So these 3 V's, volume, veracity, and variety, are really, really important to make AI work. So not only do we have that in our data set, we also then have curated over the last 20 years the scientific articles that formulate the responses. ChatGPT is just going out to the rest of the world with all of the blogs and all of and I say ChatGPT, but Claude and all of these other versions are in the same boat. They're just going out and saying, okay, great, let's look at blogs. Let's look at these influencers and what they're saying. Let's look at the studies. Great, fantastic. But there's not a great model for how can we curate this information to make sure that it's hyper accurate, particularly for this person. And so what we've done with the studies is that we've looked at all of the literature. We've taken the mechanistic, for scientific people out there, mechanistic literature, which is when people say, oh, if you look at omega-3 and it changes your cell membrane and makes it more flexible, because we saw that in a lab, that's a mechanistic study to say omega-3s influence that little thing. But on the surface, like a randomized control trial doesn't look at mechanism, it looks at outcomes. Say if we give people omega-3, we get better heart attack outcomes. Now, that may have been related to the mechanism of the cell membrane, but we're not measuring that in a randomized control trial. So we have mechanistic studies, we have observational studies, we have randomized control trials. That literature is what we should be using to understand what's going on in the body and understand the relationships that sits within it. That's been curated over the last 20 years. So we have a very, very, very extensive but specific set of literature that has been accumulated over a couple of decades to match all of the things that we're measuring. So what does that mean? It means that when you go to your doctor, you want them to be using the studies that are available and not some guy's blog. Essentially, you want to be making sure where is the source of your information coming from. I want to know the mechanism. I want to know what happens when this actually gets applied to individuals in a randomized controlled trial. I want to know all of that. And that's what our engine can do without any distraction. It's a closed system and it isn't distracted by all of the other noise out there in the blogosphere and the random written stuff, but rather the evidence that's informing the insights has been curated and handpicked over many, many years. So it means that there's a lot less noise. The learning signal is what the technical name is. The learning signal is far better for medicine because it's medical information that sits in there, if that makes sense. And then we've then gone to great lengths to train it in every single discipline of medical science. So all of the specialties, endocrinology and psychotherapy and not psychotherapy, psychiatry and cardiology and everything. Anyway, there's lots of
orthopedics. Yeah,
exactly. It's all of the things. Neurology. Exactly. Sorry, my brain had a blank. And then we've also gone to all of the evidence where there's evidence for all of the natural therapies. So what is published in the naturopathic literature? What is published in Chinese medicine? What is published in the different disciplines that people use for their healthcare? And we've matched that all as well. And then we've looked at expanded fields of study that have got a lot of promise, but not as much evidence to say, okay, what are some guidelines if we're looking at someone doing IV therapy, if we're looking at this NAD therapy that people are doing right now, if we're looking at cold immersion or hot immersion or hydroparic oxygen therapy, whatever it might be, all of these incredible recovery strategies, light therapy, what is the evidence for it? What are the mechanisms? How does that pair up with our data set and the other mechanisms that we have? What is the randomized control data for that as well? What can we glean from that? And not only do we have this very granular, individualized data set, we have this highly supervised and very comprehensive list of medical scientific literature that means that the information that's being drawn upon is specific to medical science. That's and without the distraction and designed by a large number of professionals, all leading in their field. And so then the third component that we have, because where AI can lose itself is it's very literal, or it can make up abstract relationships. There's been a huge amount of work that's gone into the training of the physiological systems within the platform as well. So it understands what happens when, I'm going to give this person more carbohydrates, but I'm going to predict what actually happens to their body in the next 6 months. And knowing that, I'm going to put other interventions in place to then support the changes that I'm predicting to occur in this body, because I understand how the heart and the liver and the pancreas and the thyroid are interacting together. I understand how this is going to lower these hormones within the body, and that will have this change on this part of the system over here. It's just like a very, very, very well-informed functional medical doctor in your pocket all of the time. But then it's got this medical version, the CLIA, that allows the integrative doctor to do something very, very powerful with it. With this, it has a clinical brain, and that's been trained throughout the years as well to make sure it understands the relationships that are happening within the body. And we've been able to develop an incredible understanding of that through the data set that we have. So we've been able to add a lot to the understanding of how the body works and how relationships show up in different bodies. And we also have 80 different specialists that are blinded and are asked questions about, if you've got a 40-year-old with thyroid condition, but this, and this, based on the recommendations, based on the guidelines, based on your clinical opinion, what do you think their functional range should be? What do you think their levels of things should be? What would the signs and symptoms that you'd be seeing at that level? So we've chosen 80 different specialists from lots of different disciplines or throughout medicine, and then we blind them, and then we ask them questions, and then we are pairing that with international guidelines, national guidelines, so that the AI is able to understand the person, the literature, the clinical opinion, and then say, this is most likely going to be your best functional reference range based off the lab data, based off the evidence, based off the longevity papers, based off the individual profile that you have as well. It is a custom-built, specifically designed medical brain that is its only job is to understand the human, understand the evidence, and put the right information in front of you. Whereas ChatGPT it's trained on lots of stuff, but it doesn't have the rules and the setup to act like that clinician in a reliable way. It will look like it does, but it is not specifically trained in the way that I've just described it. It's a completely different setup and focus for how they use their data.
Yeah, and me having used it, I've experienced both, as I've said, and it really it's so cute. It really is a big difference. Even the way everything is laid out on CLIA when you ask a question, it's very different because it does take everything into account. It blows my mind, everything that it comes up with, because it's even bringing things into play that I didn't even think were part of the picture. So it's pretty incredible the stuff that it comes out with and how it presents it. It'll even give like tables, and you don't get that look from ChatGPT. It's just very generic, basic stuff.
100%.
And
And a
so
way to
different.
think about it might be, you've got a clinician that is trained in all of medicine, and they've seen literally 20 years or 40 years of clients, and they've seen all manner of different clients, and they just have a really good sense for the different elements that are going to come into their treatment, and they're driven by how can we really understand this person as much as possible and give them something that's specific for them right now. Just think about that for a second. That's the kind of clinician that I want to go to. ChatGPT, the LLMs are like, oh, I've got the internet. Let's ask some questions of the internet and see what it says. Like, literally, that is the difference. Yeah, it's not comparable, and it's really important that we can like boil it down to those simple examples, because it's dangerous using, yeah, and even to the point where the way that CLIA is built is you do your assessment where there's an incredible amount of information that's held about your body and what it needs. And then you're loading up your bloods and you're loading up your microbiome tests and your genetics. Now, when you just ask a question of, this person's tired, what should I do? It's informing that answer with like 10,000 data correlates just from the initial setup, then your bloods and how will they relate together. And it's saying, oh, based on that specific data, the fatigue could be coming from this blood marker here, this time of day here, the exercise program is doing is wrong here. Whereas ChatGPT, if you put all of that data into a ChatGPT prompt, it times out. It can't actually handle that level of prompt. There's too much individual data to be able to manage that. So not only doesn't have the training, but it can't actually take the load, whereas CLIA is specifically designed to deal with incredibly complex algorithms and levels of data that the LLMs aren't able to do.
So true. And so when Dr. Cam is talking about the initial assessment, so this is the profile. It's your PH 360 profile. It is attached to that. So all of the things that were input when we do an onboarding, we do measurements, very specific measurements, and then there's an extensive health questionnaire that looks at all types of things. And I think I've talked about it on here. I can't remember, but it's very specific things, not just your hair color, eye color, but some medical, what you're experiencing now or within a certain amount of time, a little bit of family history. So and what are you currently doing? What are you eating now? How often are you training? Women, are you perimenopause, postmenopause, having normal periods? All of these things get taken into account. Are you doing bioidentical hormone therapy, on birth control? So have you had any cancer diagnosis? It's a really extensive questionnaire. So the CLIA is attached to that. So it has all of this information that's input that creates this profile with the PH 360 that gives recommendations. And then, like he said, I do DNA. So I can put in the genetic reports, or I'll sit there. It's amazing. I think this thing is just going to shut down on me because there's times you can type in what your questions are or your comments, or you can speak them. And there's times when I have so much, I have a DNA report I just did on someone, and I haven't uploaded it in there because it has to be a specific form. So I'll get the snips that I'm most concerned about, and I'll say, okay, look at the labs I just uploaded. which would be the basic labs typically, or some of them could have like a Dutch report or a Dutch test, gut tests, like you said, whatever it is. And then I'll say, okay, here's the SNPs, and I start reading things out. And then because this is where I'm versed, I know the propensity. So if this is doing this, am I right in thinking this? Because I feel like this could be expressing this way. And I get done, and it's this long paragraph, and it just starts spitting out information to me. And like I said, creating tables and making it so easy to read, and it separates everything. That here's the lab assessment, and it's very detailed, and then it'll bring the DNA into it. And the beautiful thing, it will save every interaction you've had with it. So you can go back and look at something that you might have input a month ago or 2 months ago on a client or a patient. It keeps it, all your interaction, and it'll keep rolling with you. I am just I'm so grateful for it, because the human brain can only take in so much information and think so many ways, right? Even with this complex system. And to see the amount of information, I have a client with extreme high cholesterol, and it's over 500. We actually I have to give a props here, because in 3 weeks we have dropped that cholesterol over 200 points with an extreme diet change. This is someone who is carnivore. But CLIA, because the functional medicine practitioner that he worked with was like, "No, you can stay carnivore. This is what it just happens. It just drives up your cholesterol, your LDL, and it's okay because your HDL looks good." Me, from having done PH360 for so long and worked with genetics, I said, this concerns me. So by inputting everything into CLIA, got his DNA back, and where if you put this into ChatGPT, like you said, hey, is saturated fat okay for this person? It's going to say, yeah, it's carnivore. And this is what we see, that higher LDL levels and total cholesterol on carnivore. And it looks like he has a healthy HDL level. What I did was get labs done and dug a deeper level to check all the lipids and the transports, like apolipoprotein B, LPA, particle sizes and particle numbers. There was the danger. And I saw it and I thought, okay, but put it into CLIA, and CLIA said, yeah, we got a problem here and we need medical intervention. So I was able to relay all of the information. It just confirmed everything that I had been thinking. But my concern was, you put that into ChatGPT and it's going to say this person is fine. Not going to say go ahead and do all these other lipid tests, and you could have a ticking time bomb happening.
Right.
With
And this is
high risk.
That's a really important part of it as well, is that because we're specifically building this engine, or have specifically built this engine to understand medical stuff, we've trained it on every type of lab that you can imagine. So even if you upload some labs that, like those more nuanced sort of cholesterol markers, but there's some really odd ones as well that functional doctors and naturopaths use. We've trained it to pick that information up accurately and then know how to treat it. Whereas ChatGPT doesn't have that treatment, because there's not as much information about it. And so it doesn't put the weighting on it. But we've specifically gone and searched for that information and then appropriately applied the weighting that is required for those things. So this is where we've been selective with the data that we've been able to pick up, selective with the training that we've done, so that when it does look at something like that, it's understanding the full picture better, just because it's trained better. It's more knowledgeable in medical science than the normal LLM databases that are being used. Yeah.
Yeah. So the combination of that with things off the profile, I've used it, like I said, for myself. I noticed as an activator, I'm definitely taxed by altitude. I would have a lot of trouble in altitude. And then I'd come home, and I thought it was just because I was spending time at very high altitude, like 11, 12,000 plus feet. I couldn't sleep. So I couldn't recover. And so I just started asking it questions about me. And I'm hypothyroid. And I said, and it said that, and I knew this was knew this was the case, but again, it was confirming some things and pulling new things out for me, that high altitude and longer periods of time, I'd be up there 6 hours easily, that it can make me more hyperthyroid. Here I'm taking 42 micrograms of T3 only in the morning and then again in the afternoon. And I'm going into the mountain, up at the top of this mountain, and I'm feeling hyper. What actually worked for me, now I'm sleeping like a baby on those days when I'm up there. And this has never, I've been back here for 7 years. I've never slept after a hike. And even in altitude, I skip my afternoon dose and I feel like this, nice and calm. I don't feel hyper and I recover. Like my heart rate variability since I started using CLIA to help me dial in even more, because I'm always the guinea pig. My heart rate variability has gone from a low of 38, which was in April, to in the 70s, and now the 70s is a normal. And I'm not young. And the other thing so I was afraid to do my True Diagnostics epigenetic age test because I had such a hell of a year that I thought all the stress I've had, I was really afraid that I started to age at a quicker rate. And it came out, I got it back, and the one thing we look at, and this is the reason I'm bringing this up because of the time frame, is the pace of aging, which is the Dunedin pace, and it changes every 8 to 12 weeks. And I didn't do it before. I was at 0.79. We want to be under 1 year biologically for every chronological year. And I was at 0.79 a couple of years ago. I really thought that was going to be high this time because of the stress I've gone through. But here I'm looking at heart rate variability, having climbed up to an incredible norm, sleeping, recovering, feeling amazing. Performance is great. And I dropped my pace of aging even more. I'm at I think it's 0.76 now. So I'm aging backwards. And then the epigenetic age came up as when I hit 60 next week, it'll be 11 years younger. And we want to be 1 to 6. Every system it showed is the only one that was aging more rapidly was hormones. And I'm like, that's the one thing I'm still trying to get that absolutely dialed in. And I'm even using CLIA to help with that. If I used myself as a case study in looking at this, just in working with it for these few months, like you can't discount that, how it helped me to really dial in. And this client was early stages of kidney disease. And so I said, are you cool with me working with CLIA? Let's use this. And let's bring it on. He had been sent to a kidney specialist and he's actually going to be on the podcast. We already recorded it. It's incredible. Very overweight, insulin resistant, pre-diabetic, couldn't get his blood sugar under 100. It was just a hot mess. He is now down, I want to say like 50 pounds or more. Now this is since like June. Okay, and we're October now, July, August, September, so 4 months. In the first 2 weeks, because the PH360 took him to the low protein diet, and I was asking CLIA all of that so I could make sure I relayed the information to him, but it pulled out that, because I said, why, could this be affecting this and this be affecting this? And I put his genetics in. And let's roll with all the pH recommendations. And he was all excited, super motivated in it. In 2 weeks, and it has not changed, we have had his blood sugar into the 80s. And that's regularly. He went to see the kidney doctor 6 weeks later, and the doctor was like, we'll see you in a year. All his numbers looked amazing. And like I said, he's dropped a bunch of weight. He feels amazing, but we really use the CLIA to help dial in even specific just lifestyle things. How much should he be working out? Because we'll have some general things on the profile, but it was like, let's come up with a plan, and it will tell you. We can help come up with a plan here. Do you want me to spell it out for you? Yup. So it'll spell out, here's an activity plan, the amount of time, the type of exercises that should be done at this time. And it's like, I can translate this to my clients, And again, they're off and running. So it just allows such precision for that individual, and none of this, even functional medicine. This is my one beef with functional medicine. I love my practitioners, but even when they get their tests back, it's generic it's the recommendation for this condition, right? Not for what is this individual actually experiencing. If you come up with this on a test, we need to supplement with this, or we need to put you on this diet. It's never, and I will tell you, I saw today, it was Sarah yesterday, functional medicine practitioner, and yay for her. She was working with someone who was type 2 diabetes, and she said she's off her meds. It's 2 years working with her. I get that result, and I've gotten it with so many people. Go back and listen to the ones with Eric that I've done. We get that result in 6 weeks or less a lot of the time. Just these incredible changes because of how precise we can be. That's my little input on what I've seen clinically with my clients using it and with myself. And just a you can't get any more different with that than ChatGPT or any of the other ones that are like that. The precision is just not there.
That's right. Yeah. And the part to reiterate about that is CLIA has an LLM in it, which is the language part that gives it the personality, but it's the data that the language is forming from. It's the direction that that data has, or the way that it processes it. It's even the type of language that it's being presented to. Whereas ChatGPT's got a lot of noise in it. The data from CLIA is purely designed specifically to understand the individual, understand their requirements, understand what they need right now and how that may change. So they're not ChatGPT, Claude, they're not fit for purpose. They're not fit for purpose as a medical platform because that wasn't their design. That wasn't how they were created. And even some of your medical literature AIs, like open source and things like that, they're still not fit for clinical reasoning about the individual. They're fit for summarizing the literature, but they're not doing
Yes.
it in relationship to the the very bespoke individual detail of that person, because there's too many inputs to understand the individual. It blows the program up. It doesn't, they can't process it. So you've got to have a specific program that can crunch an incredible amount of data in one prompt. And that's precisely how we've designed our technology. It's the LLM makes everything look equal though, because you just get this great information and it reads really well and its grammar's perfect and it's got the personality that's very approachable, but the source of data, which is completely hidden, the source of data is the real question. So hopefully that just reiterates the main points, but it's just like putting a monster truck into a Formula One race. So it's a great car and it's a fantastic thing for like driving over the stands and driving over the rest of the cars, but it's definitely not going to win a race. And it's just understanding that the normal search LLMs are great. They're fit for purpose in that they're very, very good at searching the information and just gathering lots of information, summarizing lots of text, but they don't hold a candle to what the medically designed platforms can do, particularly CLIA, which has the most extensive database of anything in the world.
That's what I was just going to ask. Isn't it the biggest, the most extensive of any of them out there? And there's not many that are out there, I don't think, are there?
Not to, so the thing, not to the level of granularity that we have. So we have the amount of data that we have, so the individual data points that we have on each person, what we can interpret from each of those data points, and then the time that we've had people following up as well to observe how they change over time and things like that. There's a 5 to 10 year, what they call a data moat, 5 to 10 year data moat between, like, if we're sitting in a castle full of data, there's 5 to 10 years that someone would have to go away, collect hundreds of thousands of individuals, measure them all specifically, and then follow them for 10 years before they could catch up to where we are. At that point, we'll be another 10 years down the track with a larger data set again. So it's a really wonderful thing to be working with. It's great to be able to talk about it because it's precision health up until this point has been something that you laboriously have to learn in great depth, and then they learn how to apply it well. And it just has shortened that cycle of learning so powerfully so that it's just, and that's the beauty of LLMs, is they've made all of this information so accessible, which is wonderful.
Yeah, and what I also love about it is, like you said, when we get into the precision health, we have to learn all this stuff. It helps me learn more. I'm not and this is what I tell all my people. I am a coach. I'm not a practitioner. I don't diagnose, treat, or cure. So I don't use it to diagnose, treat, or cure. I use it all around the lifestyle. Now, if you're a practitioner, you can go into those areas. I just watch that scope of practice, but even within lifestyle, it's so precise. And it teaches me. Like, it's been great again with a different one system or one part of a system that's interacting with another system or with a gene that I knew a lot of basics of, but didn't have more extensive detail on how things are interacting. And so it's even helping educate me even more, and not having to be on. We were talking about this on this podcast I just did before you, having to go into all the, or was it you, go into all the PubMed articles. I don't want to do that. I'm an activator. I don't have patience for that, to sit and read research, but to have it presented to me that here is the research, but in a synopsis that is pertaining to this specific person. And it's just so helpful that we don't have to overload our brains trying to think that we know everything, because nobody does. And when you demoed this to me, we had a practitioner. She was a functional medicine nurse practitioner, and she was pretty blown away by the use of it at the time. She didn't get to use it, but just the demo of it, she was like, I'm in. So I'm talking from a coach standpoint, but having seen somebody witness how it works that was a practitioner, I think that's important to put out there, that the feedback coming back from practitioners is quite good as well.
Absolutely, 100%. The time, it's a very exciting time in medicine. It's we can do some really, really cool things now, but obviously with cool things, you need to be careful about how you apply them, and that's where we've gone to great lengths to make sure you can feel good about applying what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else you want to add? I think we covered. I think you put it all out there and made the
Yeah, it was a fairly solid monologue right at the start. No, I think I've said all of the stuff that I wanted to just about this, because I just think like the education around this is super important. But I think that the key messages are there. Really, it's fit for purpose. What's the type of data? What's the volume of data? What's the truth of that data? What's the variety in that data? And these are the things that you aren't that sure of in ChatGPT and Claude, because it's accessing it from so many different places. And then, is it fit for purpose? Is it thinking like a clinician? Is it trained to understand the principles like a clinician does? There's a big hole in LLMs, because they can't do that because they're not trained to do it. Really, really big key differences. And it will only become more obvious over time, which are the better platforms to be working with. And until then, please don't use your normal LLMs because
Please don't.
yeah,
Please don't. Reach out.
yeah,
Just reach
exactly.
out.
It's better that you're finding an LLM that's specifically for health, not just one that you can get for a few dollars a week and
Yeah.
think it's going to give you everything that you need in this space.
Yeah, and if you're doing any coaching program with me with the PH360, this is what we have access to
Mhm.
to further your experience. So don't use the ChatGPT. Dial in the right way, reach out to me. I'm here. Or if you're somewhere else and you have another PH practitioner, they might be using it too. But reach out to me and I'm happy to help. Cam, we'll have all your info in the show notes, and I would invite people go back and listen to my very first 2 episodes of this podcast. It was from April of 2024, and Cam was my very first guest, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be standing here right now doing what I do. And I had posted like a little short social media short, and it was a couple weeks ago after all these crazy things went down here in the States, and I was like, I need some nature therapy. Went up to the Rocky Mountain National Park, went to my favorite lake, sat on a rock, and one of the things I recorded, I said, I'm just sitting here thinking about my purpose. And I know my purpose all my life has been to help people. I was a cop. but I've had my ups and downs in this business, that's for sure. And but yet it's the results that we get with this that literally save lives that I it just helps reinforce my purpose every day I use it, whether it's with
Love it.
myself, but seeing it with other people. You don't have to sit there, guys, with having issues. Don't wait. Let's get the help you need. So reach out. All my info's in the show notes, but I'm happy to answer questions about it. You can go to a chat page on Facebook, which is Everyday Epigenetics, Raw Real Relatable Chat. Happy to ask questions. If you have any specific questions for Cam, I can always relay them to him as well if you need more information. But put this out there. Let's stop people from trying to diagnose and treat and cure themselves with ChatGPT. Share this, please. Thank you for listening. Cam, thank you again for coming on.
Very welcome.
Always
And
blessed to have you.
I've just dropped a document to you as well. This is essentially a summary that we've got that just really lays out the difference between normal LLMs and the precision medical ones as well. So you could maybe pop that as a download.
Fantastic. We'll put that in the show notes as well. And I think that'll be perfect. Thank you so much from across the pond, down
Great to
under.
see you.
You too. Thanks everybody for joining us. Get out there, make it a great day, and be your most authentic self. Thank you so much for tuning into our podcast.
If you enjoyed this week's episode, we'd love for you to share it, leave a review or comment, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Help us get this information out to everyone who could benefit, and we'll keep bringing you the content you crave.
You can also check out our podcast site at everydayepigenetics.co and sign up for our newsletter to stay updated on upcoming episodes. The link is in the show notes.
If you're interested in DNA or epigenetic coaching with Susan, or Radiant Life Coaching for deep inner work with Kate, our contact info is in the show notes below.
Now go and make it a great day and let your most authentic self shine.